Alright, class, welcome back. Getting close to the end here. This should be our last lecture video for the semester. After this, you'll have to take the lower extremity quiz, and then next week you'll have your final exam that will be open Monday through Friday. I am going to hide the answers to the previous quizzes. However, the quiz will still be up for you to look at the questions, and just know that I reuse the questions from quizzes 1 through 4 in the final exam. So those are your study guides, quizzes 1 through 4. If you know everything on those quizzes, then you'll know everything in the final exam. So just take a look through those. If you don't know one of the answers, then that's something that you should open up the book or one of the lectures and study. Okay? Make sure you have gotten your final rehab project presentation submitted. Just put that link into the discussion board, and then make sure you get on and comment on 3 classmates' presentations. Okay? If you guys have any questions about due dates or projects or assignments, feel free to message me, or if you have questions about grades or anything like that, feel free to message me. Once you get your final exams taken, I'll pretty much just put your grade up right after you're done. So the sooner you get it done, the sooner you'll see your grade. Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to message me. Alright, so looking at foot rehabilitation, we already looked at the anatomy. Some things, that obviously we've touched on each week. You got to think about how are you going to maintain general body conditioning, and we've talked a lot about that in past weeks, being creative of how you're going to do that. So one example is getting them in the pool, using the upper body ergometer. Maybe they're in a situation where they can get on a bike and cycle. So you just have to be creative with your individual athlete. And then obviously they can still be doing upper body exercise as well. So maintaining their cardiovascular conditioning, thinking about weight bearing as they start to progress. So if they're not already weight bearing, can they walk with crutches and partially weight bear while still using the crutches to bear the rest of their weight, or can they be in a walking boot so that they're still putting weight on that affected leg, stuff like that. So be creative, think about those, always utilize those as part of your rehabilitation plan. Okay, joint mobilizations are used in the foot, usually more towards the ball of the foot. So as that animated video talked about, the tarsal bones are very connected and very stable. There's not a whole lot of movement in them. So there is some joint mobilization that we can do, but we don't do a ton in there. Typically, those are pretty fused together, and we don't do a ton of mobilizing. Where we do mobilize more often is towards the ball of the foot, so we can mobilize each metatarsal individual of each other, so we can stabilize one metatarsal while we mobilize the one next to it, creating more range of motion in there. That helps increase that transverse arch. And then we can go farther down into the MTP joints. And the MTP is the metatarsal phalangeal joint. So in between those metatarsals and the phalanges. And we can stabilize the metatarsal and we can mobilize the phalange. Specifically, we typically use it on the big toe, but you can use it on any of them. If you remember in that animated video, that guy talked about how when we extend the toes and we get up on the ball of the foot, that range of motion is very important to be able to get all the way to where those toes are all the way extended and we're all the way up on the ball of our foot, because we use that when we're walking, when we're running, when we're jumping. And if that range of motion isn't there, or if it's painful, that can really, really take away from our rehab, really take away from us being able to run or jump or do any kind of athletic type movements. So we mobilize those joints probably the most often in the foot. All right, some different ways to gain flexibility and range of motion. Obviously, you can just stretch, with your hand, or a clinician could stretch, pulling your toes back into flexion or extension. They have these fancy little machines, or whatever you want to call it, that you can stretch on, but they're really not necessary. I don't even have one of these because, you could put a towel around the edge of your toes, or a TheraBand, or just have, do it yourself like this person. So lots of different ways to stretch, but the main thing you're going to be focusing on is flexion and extension of all of those toes, all those phalanges. Something else I like to mention during this is rolling out using a lacrosse ball or a golf ball or a tennis ball, but putting that on the ground and then putting your foot on top of it and rolling, especially all through your arch in here. If you can loosen up that plantar fascia, loosen up all those intrinsic muscles, that can really take away pain, and it can also increase range of motion and make walking and running less painful. Um, so that's a good one to use. Okay, when we get to strengthening, um, a lot of the exercises that we use for strengthening the foot, we also use for strengthening the ankle. There's a lot of just overlap. So here's a couple of them. You can pretend like you're writing the alphabet with your toes, but that's really an ankle exercise, but it's also going to work the foot. Picking up different objects, ankle circumduction, just going around in circles. You can even put your foot on the ground and roll it around in circles. Trying to spread your toes out and then grip them back together. Towel gathering, or I call them towel scrunches. All these can be helpful. All of them could be ankle or foot. Um, and I actually am going to show you probably the two that I use the most often. Okay, so here's a towel scrunch. So you lay the towel out on the floor, put your foot on top of it, and you use your toes to pull in the towel, scrunch it up, really hold and contract it, and then you relax, let it back out, and then you grab more towel and scrunch it back in. And usually what I would do is have an athlete start at one side of the towel and towel scrunch their way until they've pulled the entire towel in, and then reset the towel, start again. And if they can do that, you know, 5 times or 10 times, depending on the size of the towel, then that would make up one set. So that's a really good intrinsic muscle exercise for strengthening in the foot. We use that a lot when both ankle sprains and different foot injuries are rehabilitating and coming back to play. And then the other one is called a marble pickup. In this video, she's actually using some stones, which is fine, just any kind of small object like that. But you just pick them up, you're grabbing it with your foot, grabbing it with your toes, setting it down in a separate pile. And then what I would have this person do is once they've moved all of them over, then they'd pick them back up and move them all back over to the other pile. And you could go back and forth 2 to 4 to 6 times, depending on how many marbles or stones you have. So that's another good intrinsic muscle exercise, really good for strengthening the foot. Both of those are really good for strengthening the plantar fascia and the arch. I talked about a lot of times the reason that we get foot chronic pain or injuries is because the arch flattens out or it's not supportive enough. And so both of those exercises will really help to strengthen that arch and keep it in the position that it's supposed to be in while you're walking and running and jumping. Okay, some neuromuscular control. Lots of different unstable exercises that we can do, but we want to start with just single leg balancing, trying to just balance on that foot um, for 30 seconds or 60 seconds. And then what we can do is we can progress to our different unstable surfaces. We can utilize a BAPS board. We can utilize an Airex pad, which is just a foam pad that's unstable. There's other ones like these sandals that you can use where it's an unstable surface to stand on. These are all good for balance and for proprioception and for neuromuscular control, really using those intrinsic muscles to control and balance yourself. And it's going to be necessary to do all of these and be very good, with these balance and neuromuscular exercises before you move on to the plyometric phase, because the plyometric phase, when you're jumping, you need to already have that good balance and control in order to jump without injuring yourself. Okay, so once you have good balance and you're stable on the BAPS board and you're stable in single leg balance, then moving forward, you can do something similar to what we did with our ankle rehab, where we did single leg hops. Okay, single leg hops are great for the ankle, but they're also great for the foot. So just hopping in place, hopping side to side, hopping front to back, and then eventually in all directions in some sort of figure eight or something where you have diagonals and front and back and side to side and all that. And so that would be a great plyometric exercise as you go through your foot rehab. Um, and then functional progression. And we always want to take into consideration sport specific. We're going to want to, progress them from a walk to a jog to a run to a sprint, changing directions, being able to break down quickly and accelerate quickly. And like I said, those, hops, starting with double leg hops, moving to single leg, moving to different directions, and then just incorporating different drills from their specific sport. So if they're a soccer player, they need to start working on soccer drills. If they're a basketball player, they need to start working on basketball drills. And the quicker we can get them to sport specific, the quicker we can get them back to play. So even if we're doing, if we're working on them moving from a jog to a run, well, we can do that while they're dribbling a basketball or while they're dribbling a soccer ball. If we're working on them changing directions, well, why not, change directions on a basketball court like you're running a play. That way, you're starting to get in the mindset of your sport, and you're also doing your rehab at the same time. Okay, so that's how you kind of incorporate that functional progression into your sport specific exercise. All right, well, that is it for the foot. So if you have any questions, post them into that discussion board or message me. And other than that, good luck with the final quiz and the final exam and getting your presentation in. I'm here to help you guys. If you have questions, please reach out. But other than that, I am looking forward to seeing your presentations. Have a good one.